Our GMC Sierra tweet of the night comes from the Pro Football Hall of Fame. They have their semifinalists for induction. Class of 2023. There are 28 people on it. They'll pare that down before they make the announcement over the Super Bowl week. And there are a couple of Steelers on there, Andrew. We got James Harrison for the very first time. And, of course, Hines Ward, who has been on there now. This will be his 7th time. And also a guy from Aliquippa and Pitt, Darrell Revis. I'm interested in your take on Hines Ward. Do you think this may be the year he gets in? Again, you got some really talented guys on first-timers who may clog it up, I think, for wide receivers, because there are plenty of wide receivers in this group as well.
Yeah, 7 wide receivers. I think if I were to take just one, and it's rare that multiple wide receivers get in to one Hall of Fame class. So if I'm forced to pick one wide receiver, Bob, from that list, for me it's got to be Andre Johnson. And I'm a big Hines fan. And I think if he were in a more dynamic offense that wasn't so run-based and physical, he would have better numbers. But Johnson's numbers are incredible for a guy that didn't have good quarterback play for most of his career, just like Hines, and at times led the league in receiving yards and was a big athletic receiver, not quite Larry Fitzgerald or Calvin Johnson, but a little bit below those guys. I think he's the best one. So unfortunately for Hines, I don't think this is the year, Bob.
I think Anquan Bolden's a guy. They have Reggie Wayne I saw on the list. There are a lot of talented guys, and I think he may have to wait just as, for example, Alan Faneca. There were a lot of good offensive linemen, and you very rarely see a couple or 3 of them go in one class. You got to wait your time, and Hines may be in that situation as well. What about James Harrison? You could make a case over a span of years he was the best in the game. Is that good enough for him to be in the Hall of Fame?
Well, I'll do the same exercise. DeMarcus Ware had a similar 2 or 3 year run, but then was great for a longer amount of time. Played the same position. Won a Super Bowl in Denver. So I think he'll get in over Harrison. I don't think it's an anti-Steelers bias. Sometimes that shows up. I think that's why L.C. Greenwood still isn't in and why it took Donnie Shell so long to get in. But in this case, for as much as I love those guys, Bob, that's why the Hall of Honor's there. That's why the Steelers have their own Hall of Fame now and bring back Heath Miller and guys like that to honor them. Because these were really important players to the Steelers, but maybe less so to the sport of football at large. So you honor them as a team, but Hines Ward and James Harrison, I don't think a Pro Football Hall of Fame necessarily has to induct those players. Really good, but not really all-time greats for me.
I'm still going to think Ward gets in eventually, just because there are others in there. Andre Reed, for example, if you put the numbers together, they're very similar. But Ward, again, is penalized to some degree because of the offense he was in, but the blocking that he brought,
agree.
And the fact that he has some postseason success to the tune of a Super Bowl MVP means a lot. It should mean a lot. Let's go to the lines. We've got a lot of them right now, Andrew. We'll begin with Frank, our number one Cochran Go One Better call of the night. Frank is in Moon Township. Hello, Frank.
Hello, Frank.
Hey, Bob. Hey, Pony. How you guys doing? Hey, I just want to change it to the Penguins for a minute and get your guys' perspective on this. First of all, we got a guy making $3.5 million sitting in the press box.
Terrible.
And second of all, they moved Peterson to Letang's line, and it seems to me, I don't know. I mean, I'm a Letang fan, but he's not playing well this year, and it seems like Peterson's has dropped off with his play, and now they're moving. I read today they're putting Petrie on the first power play line and taking Rust off. So I see Sully's making some moves, but it seems like it's hard to play with Letang because he pinches so much, and he's always on the offensive end of the ice so much that it's hard for another defenseman to play with.
It is, but Brian Dumoulin for years was that guy, but Brian Dumoulin hasn't played the way he has in the past, which precipitated maybe the move to Pettersson. But, bottom line is Chris Letang has, you know what you get with him, Andrew. He is a tremendous talent, but he does pinch. He does put himself at risk sometimes for odd man breaks, and he's oftentimes, in different positions instead of being in front of the net. It's tough for another defenseman to play with him. It's very similar to if you equate it to safeties in football. You better understand how to play with Troy Polamalu. You better understand how to play with Minkah Fitzpatrick.
Yep. Well, I think the Penguins' offseason is really one that's subject to a lot of criticism. The headlining moves of keeping the core intact with Malkin, Letang, and Rust, and even to a lesser extent, Raquel. I think those moves were ones that where the price came in on those players They're all defendable. They're all defensible moves. Once you go beyond that, though, Bob, Kapanen, great point by Frank. That was a first guess by all of us. Why did they bring him back at that price? And then the moves they made defensively. You brought up Marino. Marino's playing well in New Jersey. Petrie comes in. Matheson goes out. They couldn't find a trade partner for Pettersson, though. Now he's got to play on a top pair when he's not that kind of defenseman. So they really, I think, the depth moves by Hextall, Bob, I think leave a lot to be desired. Early goings, yes. We're still early in the season. But I don't think right now, the verdict right now is not a favorable for Ron Hextall when it comes to the depth moves this team made.
No, I would agree, but I still think they're a good team when playing the right way, and if healthy, they can be, certainly a contender in the East. But their Metropolitan Division is very difficult to try to put themselves in a position. The other thing I'll say is that P.O. Joseph has been better. I'm glad he's playing. I'd like to see Ty Smith. He's down on the minors. He shouldn't be there. He should be here. We'll see if that changes. Salary cap is a salary cap, and it affects what they do. Let's go to Tom in Moon Township. Hey, Tom.
Hi, Tom.
Hey, real quick, 4 things.
You only get 2, Tom. We don't have a lot of time.
Kenny needs to set his feet. He's bouncing all the time. He's not setting his feet. He's throwing high all the time. Sid is a true leader. Gino's son coming in and introducing him for the 1,000th frame was great. And the big smile when Gino was on the ice, when they all did the warm-ups, was fantastic.
Yeah, and his son, by the way, Nikita, what he did there, Andrew, at his, I don't know what his age is, but he went through that lineup, the starting lineup, no problem whatsoever. And I know he speaks English, but he's also, up to speed on Russian for a young kid like that. That was very impressive, and I thought a great move by the Penguins.
It was probably the best thing I saw on Twitter all weekend, because Twitter does still exist, by the way. It hasn't gone anywhere, contrary to some of the other reports about it. I think Kenny Pickett set his feet better in this last game. I think about the throw he made to Pickens for a touchdown where he took a hit that should have been a roughing the passer penalty. The move he made even, I know it was garbage time, but how about the throw downfield to Pickens that got dropped, where he just aired it out and it was right on the money from the pocket. So I do think that strides were made by him in this game. Now, most of them were in the first half, and there was regression in the second half, which is unfortunate. But I do think there were a handful of plays that you could look at and say, those are NFL franchise quarterback throws by Kenny Pickett.
Right, and the play you're alluding to where he got hit, he put the throw to George Pickens, 24 yards. I'll debate you on that. I don't think that should be roughing. I know that in this NFL, they do tend to call it. They call anything that requires a hit on a quarterback. But, again, I tend to defer to the defensive players who are trying to make plays there. By the letter of law, should it have been called? Probably, but I'm glad they didn't. All right, let's move along. We got Anthony in the Hill. I thought you were going to comment there. Anthony, what's up?
Hi, Anthony.
How you doing? I would like to know how you think about the Steelers' offense, and do you think they're underperforming or overperforming?
I think they've been handicapped to the play calling, which, when you hear other teams talk about it, like we saw Pratt after the game say that, hey, we knew it was coming. Yeah, sure, you could say that, and yeah, you can say execution, all of that factors in, but it's never a good sign when people talk about, well, we know it's coming, and they stop you. And to hear that is disconcerting, and I think it makes it very difficult, especially for young players. And let's make no mistake, this team is filled with young players on offense.
Well, they're near the bottom of the league, so they have not underachieved big time because we didn't think they were going to be a good offense to begin with. But let me just react to what you just said there about the Pratt comment. Tomlin said today that we knew their plays. Well, then why didn't you stop them better? If you knew what they were going to do, why didn't you defend their plays better?
Well, he defers on execution. He said it's execution. It can't be
okay,
just
so
that
then
simple.
by that logic, Spygate doesn't matter.
Right. Well,
by that logic.
I agree with you. It does matter. And if you know, that's an advantage. You're not supposed to know. And if you limit your playbook to the point where you're just doing the same thing over and over, jet sweeps, we saw how many of those guys were waiting for Deontay Johnson. We're waiting for Steve Sims. That play doesn't work, and it doesn't set up anything. That passes the buck
and makes it sound like it's about the players and not the coaching whatsoever.
Right.
When you say it's all about execution.
It's not always all about execution. It's about coaching is putting your guys in a position to execute.
Correct.
And have the ability to do it, not hamper them with the, play being well known so that you can execute. I do think that is a problem. We got to take a break here, Andrew. We'll do it. Come back with more right here. It's the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call, Pittsburgh CW, and maybe now on 93.7 The Fan. We'll find out.